And typically on a seal, next one, which is a few centimeters in size, on the top you have this written material, and we are going to talk about that. Next one. What did the Indus people write? We really don't know. There are about 400 plus signs of various kind of shapes. Next one. This is a page from Mahadevan's concordance, and you can see shapes that are humankind, fish kind, and there are strokes and things like that. Next one. Because it has 400 odd signs, you can generally classify it either as being a particular class. For example, the signs that consist only of word signs, each word means a sign. You have thousands of letters, and Chinese script is like that. Logosyllabic writing, which has a mixture of logos and syllabi, tend to have about 400 to 900 signs. Sumerian, Egyptian are like that, and therefore by the number of signs, Indus should fall into this class. While, for example, in English, which is purely alphabetic, you have only below 40 signs or so. Next one. Okay. The direction of writing is also very clear. Next one. There are several examples. There is one seal over here, which is 6112 in Mahadevan's concordance, where you have one seal like this, the second line reads like this, and at the bottom you have two other seals where this appears in one straight line. So unless they were writing right to left and bottom to up or something strange, you would normally assume that the writing is from right to left. There is also other evidence which suggests the writing is from right to left. You can see that on the left side the signs have been compressed, the signs have been written in rather complicated manner, while here there are much more longer signs suggesting there is cramping. Next one. And there is also a few cases where the writing goes all the way on the top and the last character comes at the bottom, and the last piece of evidence shows, next one, shows that when there is a writing, it is done in counterclockwise direction, suggesting that it was written from right to left. Next one. All this suggests that most of the writing is in right to left direction. Next one. What makes the problem challenging? There are various issues why we are not able to make a one-to-one association. Primarily because the text is very short, and you typically have about average of 5 signs per writing. Next one. The longest text has only 14 signs, and you can see the example that is given there. The next one. And the longest text in multiple line comes to about 3 lines, but we really don't know how the signs are broken and things like that. So we have a limited number of knowledge. The underlying language, Mahadevan would certainly say that it is Dravidian, but to be really objective, we can simply at the stage say that we really don't know what the detailed language is. Next one. And there is no writing in multiple languages which you can check to say whether it is a particular writing or not. There is an example of Rosetta Stone there, which we don't have for Indus script. Next one. Next. Several attempts have been made in the past. A lot of scholars, probably the most common idea these days is that it is almost certainly Proto-Dravidian, but I don't want to comment on it. The bottom line is several attempts have been made in the last 130 years since the script was first identified. Next one. The sign system of it still remains ambiguous, and various claims have been made at decipherment. The problem is you cannot objectively say that, look, these are the tests you perform on your writing, and you can see that it is consistent with particular interpretation. Interpretation cannot be checked, and that is a big problem with the Indus script. Next one. So we decided to start afresh, essentially follow the path that Parpola had followed some 20-30 years ago, and some Russian groups had also followed 30 years ago. The only difference is that computer linguistics now is in a better shape than it was 30 years ago. So we know how to look for language structures in unknown script much better now than we knew 30 years ago. So that is the advantage we get. Next one. Writing sign frequencies. Next one. It's clear, for example, that only one sign accounts for 10% of all the signs, one sign occurs for 5%, and 31 signs account for 47%. Next one. So essentially what you have is just 67 signs account for 407 just 67 out of the 417 signs account for almost 80% of everything that is written, which is a useful data to have, as I will show you next one. The writing is also specific. As you can see, that particular sign is always on the right, and Mahadevan referred to that as the most common beginner. Similarly, this sign number 342 from Mahadevan's concordance almost always appears at the end and is predominantly an ending sign. So there is clearly a grammatical rule about what should start a text, what should end a text. Next one. Statistics shares, no, previous one. Go back. Statistics says that if you just take the beginner text, which is the blue line, then only a handful of signs account for all the beginners. About 80% of the beginners are just 60 signs account for all the beginners. Enders are even more rigorous. Just 20 enders can end a sentence. So you can begin a sentence with a lot of different signs, but you can, or the entire string of writing with a lot of signs, but you can end your string of writing only with a handful of signs. There's a very specific way of ending the writing. Next one. So the first question to be answered was, next one. Is Indus writing a collection of randomly ordered signs, or is there more to this order than simply beginners and enders? Next one. So we reshuffled all the signs written in the Indus script and compared the structure, and the structure is clearly very different. Next one. And we found that as long as for sequences of 2 signs, 3 signs, or even 4 signs, the writing is definitely ordered. The writing is not random. So not only is one sign at a specific location, their neighbors are also fixed until 4 signs in a line. Next one. What is the frequency? How do the signs occur? Next one. For example, we saw in the first case just one sequence, but this sequence is the most common beginner sequence. This sequence almost always comes in the middle, and this sequence comes almost always at the end. So not just one sign, but even 2, 3, and 4 signs have specific locations where they appear. Here I have a table to show you that the first 2 signs that you can see appear almost always. In 86% of the cases it appears on the right. The second line shows you that this particular sequence appears 90% of the time in the middle, and so on and so forth. Whichever pair you take, whichever the most common pair you take, it has a very specific location on where it can be written, whether it can be in the beginning or middle or end of the text. Next one. We then started applying statistical techniques to study the grammar. Next one. Okay, the most commonly used law in testing is something called the Zipf's law, which says that the frequency of the sign that you are using should be related to how commonly used that sign is. Next one. Forget about the detail. What it says is there's a quantity of ranking. You can rank a sign how frequently it is used and the number of times it is used, and you would expect it to be a power law if it is a well done ordered writing system. Next one. And what we found was that for Indus, for Mahadevan's corpus, that slope comes out to be 1.67. If you take the reduced corpus that we have taken, 1.49, and if you take only a small segmented section, in fact it comes to 0.69. Compare that with English, for example, which goes from 1.0 to 0.62 if you reduce the corpus size. So it is quite likely that Indus script also has a very language-like writing structure, and as and when we get more corpus of it, this number will also go towards what is normally called language writing. Next one. It becomes even more interesting when you take 2 signs, 3 signs, and 4 signs and their use. This is 2 signs used, 3 signs, 4 signs, and you can do that for fitting that I had shown you earlier, and you can see that for 2 signs, 3 signs, and 4 signs, the fitting is so good that Indus signs were probably not read in solo individual signs, but they were read as groups of 2 or 3 or 4 signs together. Next one. This is the table for it. I'm going to skip. It simply has all the numbers. Next one. What Zipf's law therefore suggests is that the data fits Zipf's law well. It comes close to the value of other languages. The fit for sign groups is even better than that for individual signs, and therefore it suggests that the writing rules are very specific and you can actually understand the rules of writing, and therefore if you give a language model, we should be able to test whether it is consistent with what you see in Indus. Next one. There are